Welcome to the world of science function. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy the listening. The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with an energy so tense, it seemed to hum in the very air. High above the ornate podium where the Supreme Arbiter presided, banners of every known interstellar nation hung in majestic stillness, as if holding their collective breath for the announcement to come. The room was a cathedral to diplomacy, and yet, for all its grandeur, it felt no less foreboding to those who had gathered that day. The humans, seated at a modest but defiant-looking section of the circular arena, exchanged uneasy glances. At the head of their delegation stood Captain Elena Voss, her crisp navy uniform as sharp as her fiery gaze. The Supreme Arbiter, a towering alien with translucent skin that shimmered like a nebula, rose from its seat, gesturing for silence. The room complied almost instantly, the murmurs fading into a pregnant pause. Members of the Galactic Council, the Arbiter's voice resonated, deep and ethereal. The Council has reached a decision regarding humanity's repeated infractions and their continued refusal to submit to interstellar laws. The Arbiter's many eyes shifted toward the human delegation, its expression unreadable but its tone heavy with implication. Effective immediately, the Galactic Council declares war on humanity. A ripple of gasps and murmurs spread through the chamber, but it was the humans who remained eerily still. Captain Voss cocked an eyebrow, a half-smile curling at the corner of her lips. She leaned toward her communications officer, a young man who had gone pale as moonlight. "Record this," she whispered, her voice low and calm. Then, louder, she addressed the Supreme Arbiter. "Is that all?" The words hung in the air like a thunderclap, reverberating through the chamber. The Arbiter's translucent skin darkened slightly, a sign of irritation. The murmurs grew louder, now mixed with tones of incredulity. Voss's casual defiance had struck a nerve, and that was exactly what she had intended. As the chamber's reaction built to a crescendo, a figure from the Galactic Alliance's most powerful faction, the Zernathians, stood. Ambassador Krell, whose gelatinous form glowed faintly under the chamber's lights, pointed a pseudopod directly at Voss. "Human," Krell said, his voice warbling, "you fail to grasp the gravity of this declaration. The Council's forces outnumber yours 1,000 to 1. Your insolence is as reckless as it is futile." Voss turned to Krell, unflinching. "And you fail to grasp the gravity of underestimating humanity," she replied smoothly, her words sharp enough to cut through the thick tension in the air. "We've survived plagues, wars, and the vacuum of space itself. Threats are nothing new to us. But," she tilted her head slightly, "it's always amusing when someone thinks they can scare us into submission." Her words sent a shockwave of mixed reactions rippling through the chamber. Some factions, particularly the more warlike ones, seemed to respect her audacity, their body language betraying a grudging admiration. Others, like the bureaucratic Aslorians, appeared scandalized. Krell's pseudopod quivered with barely restrained fury, but he said nothing further. When the session adjourned, the human delegation exited the chamber under a barrage of judgmental stares. Outside, the station's artificial lighting cast an almost sterile glow on the delegation's path back to their quarters. The corridors were vast and maze-like, lined with shimmering alloys that reflected their determined strides. It was here, in this moment of solitude, that the weight of their situation began to settle over them. "Captain," said Lieutenant Aaron Park, the communications officer who had recorded the proceedings. His voice was taut, like a wire about to snap. "Do you really think we can fight them? All of them?" Voss slowed her pace and turned to face her team. "It's not about whether we can fight them," she said. "It's about showing them that we won't just roll over and die. Humanity's greatest strength has always been our ability to adapt. To think creatively. And above all, to never, ever give up." Her words seemed to spark a flicker of hope in the eyes of her team, though the doubt lingering beneath the surface was undeniable. Later, in the privacy of their quarters, Voss gathered her senior officers around a holographic table displaying a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. The map was a sea of stars, with red markers indicating the fleets and territories of the Galactic Council. The human territories, by contrast, were a sparse smattering of blue dots. "We're outnumbered, outgunned, and out-resourced," said Commander Malik, her second-in-command. "Even if we consolidate every ship and soldier we've got, we're looking at a near-impossible fight." "Near impossible isn't the same as impossible," Voss countered. She tapped a few controls, zooming in on a sector where human colonies bordered the Council's territories. "This is where we make our stand. The Andrelis system. It's strategically vital. With natural resources we'll need to sustain a long-term conflict. If we can hold it, we can force the Council to rethink their plans. And if we can't?" Park asked hesitantly. Voss looked at him, her expression steely. "Then we make them pay for every inch. We remind them why humanity has survived for so long against all odds." The room fell silent, the weight of their task pressing down on them. But beneath the tension, there was also a spark, a fire that Voss had ignited with her unwavering resolve. They didn't have to win outright, they just had to survive long enough to prove that humanity couldn't be extinguished so easily. The next few days were a blur of preparation. Messages were sent to every human colony and outpost, calling for volunteers and resources. Engineers worked around the clock to retrofit their ships with experimental technology. Scientists brainstormed ways to weaponize the Council's own advanced tech against them. It was a desperate, all-hands-on-deck effort, and yet, there was a strange sense of unity that permeated the chaos. As the fleet began to assemble in the Andrelis system, Voss stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Resolute. The ship was a testament to human ingenuity, a patchwork of designs from multiple eras, held together by a combination of stubbornness and innovation. From her vantage point, she could see dozens of other ships, some sleek and modern, others battered and ancient, joining formation. It wasn't the most impressive fleet, but it was theirs. "Captain," Park said, approaching her with a data pad. "We've picked up chatter from Council fleets. They're mobilizing faster than we expected. They'll be here within 72 hours. Voss nodded, her mind already racing through contingencies. "Then we'd better make those 72 hours count." She turned to the crew, her voice carrying the weight of authority and determination. "We didn't choose this fight, but we're not going to run from it. Every system, every species that's ever been oppressed by the Council will be watching us. We're not just fighting for humanity, we're fighting to show the galaxy that no one, not even the mighty Galactic Council, is invincible." The crew erupted into cheers, their resolve hardening into something unshakable. As they prepared for the battle to come, there was an unspoken understanding among them. They were the underdogs, the scrappy survivors of a brutal galaxy. And they wouldn't have it any other way. The Andrelis system's twin suns blazed in the void, casting a stark, golden light on the assembled human fleet. From the bridge of the Resolute, Captain Elena Voss watched as the final ships arrived, their hulls glinting like knives in the darkness. Every vessel, from retrofitted mining freighters to experimental stealth fighters, was a testament to humanity's resilience. Yet the sheer disparity between their fleet and the incoming Council armada loomed large in everyone's minds. "Captain, sensors are picking up increased subspace activity," Lieutenant Park reported, his fingers dancing across the console. "Council forces are beginning to mobilize en masse. They're bringing in heavy carriers and siege cruisers." Voss nodded, her expression unreadable. "Time to arrival?" 50 hours, Park replied. "Maybe less if they push their engines." "Then let's not waste a single second," Voss said, her voice firm. "Commander Malik, I want our defense grid fully operational within the next 24 hours. Coordinate with the engineers and prioritize the long-range ion cannons." "Understood, Captain," Malik replied, already issuing orders through his comm unit. The crew moved with a sense of purpose, but tension crackled in the air like static. Voss could see it in their faces, the unspoken fear that this might be a battle they couldn't win. Still, she knew fear could be a tool, a fire that burned hottest when stoked just right. "Park," Voss said, her tone softer now. "Put me through to the fleet." Moments later, her image appeared on every ship's bridge, every crew member's personal console. "This is Captain Elena Voss," she began, her voice steady and strong. "By now, you've all seen the numbers. You know what we're up against. The Council believes this will be an easy victory, that they can crush us with sheer force. But they've forgotten one crucial thing: humanity doesn't break. When faced with impossible odds, we innovate. We adapt. And above all, we fight. She paused, letting her words sink in. Every ship in this fleet is a symbol of our determination. Every crew member here is a testament to our courage. We're not just defending our colonies or our people. We're defending the very idea that freedom is worth fighting for. So prepare yourselves. In 50 hours, we'll show the galaxy what humanity is truly capable of. The comm link ended, and for a brief moment, the bridge of the Resolute was silent. Then, one by one, the crew members resumed their tasks with renewed vigor. Voss allowed herself a small smile. The fire was lit. Over the next 24 hours, the Andrelis system became a hive of activity. On the surface of Andrelis Prime, engineers worked tirelessly to deploy planetary shields and orbital defense platforms. In the asteroid fields that bordered the system, stealth ships laid sensor mines and gravity traps designed to disrupt enemy formations. Every available resource was being stretched to its limit. In the midst of the chaos, Voss convened a meeting with her senior officers in the war room. A holographic projection of the Andrelis system dominated the center of the table, surrounded by tactical readouts and fleet compositions. "We've identified 3 likely entry points for the Council's fleet," Malik said, pointing to the glowing markers on the map. "The main force will probably come through the Zoran corridor. It's the most direct route and offers the least natural cover. Which means it'll be heavily defended," Voss noted. "What about the other 2? The Zerith Nebula and the Kolar Rift," Malik replied. "Both are more dangerous to navigate, but they could provide flanking opportunities. We'll need to deploy scouts to monitor those areas." Voss nodded. "Park, get me a full list of available recon ships. I want eyes on those entry points at all times. Malik, coordinate with the ground teams to ensure the planetary shields can hold against sustained bombardment. And someone find Dr. Tarsa. I want an update on those experimental EMP warheads." As the officers dispersed, Voss lingered by the holographic map, studying the positions and formations. The Council's overwhelming numbers loomed large in her mind, but she refused to let doubt take hold. There had to be a way to turn the tide, a way to level the playing field. The answer came unexpectedly, during a late-night strategy session with Dr. Tarsa, the fleet's chief scientist. The two were poring over schematics for the EMP warheads when Tarsa suddenly leaned back, a spark of inspiration in her eyes. "What if we don't just disable their ships?" Tarsa said, her voice tinged with excitement. "What if we use the EMPs to create a temporary dead zone in subspace? It could disrupt their communications and navigation systems, forcing them to rely on manual controls." Voss raised an eyebrow. "And how would we pull that off?" Tarsa pulled up a new set of schematics. "By deploying the warheads in a synchronized pattern, we could generate a subspace interference field. It would only last a few minutes, but in the chaos, we could strike at their command ships." Voss considered the proposal, her mind racing through the possibilities. It was risky, untested, and could backfire spectacularly. But it was also their best shot at leveling the playing field. "Do it," she said finally. "Whatever resources you need, make it happen." The next 30 hours were a blur of frantic activity. Engineers worked around the clock to modify the EMP warheads, while tacticians devised a plan to exploit the subspace dead zone. The fleet's pilots were briefed on the new strategy, their initial skepticism giving way to cautious optimism. Finally, the moment arrived. The Council's armada emerged from subspace like a tidal wave, their massive ships blotting out the stars. From the bridge of the Resolute, Voss watched as the enemy fleet took formation, their weapons charging with ominous precision. "All ships, this is Captain Voss," she said, her voice steady despite the enormity of what lay ahead. "Remember your training. Remember why we're here. Today, we fight not just for survival, but for the right to exist on our own terms. Let's show them what humanity is made of." As the first volleys of fire lit up the void, the human fleet sprang into action. Fighters swarmed like angry hornets, harrying the Council's larger vessels. Frigates and cruisers maneuvered with desperate agility, using the asteroid fields and gravity traps to their advantage. And at the heart of it all, the Resolute led the charge, its weapons blazing. The battle was chaos, a maelstrom of light and destruction. But amidst the carnage, Voss's plan began to unfold. The modified EMP warheads were deployed in a carefully calculated pattern, their detonation creating a shimmering field of subspace interference. As the Council ships faltered, their formations breaking apart, the human fleet struck with precision, targeting command vessels and supply ships. For the first time, the tide of battle seemed to shift. And for the first time, the Council realized that humanity would not go quietly into the night. The battlefield was a chaos of fire and light, a deadly symphony that unfolded across the void of the Andrelis system. The Council's armada, vast and methodical, had begun to recover from the disruption caused by the EMP warheads. Their formations restructured with unnerving efficiency, like a machine shaking off a temporary glitch. But humanity had bought itself precious time, and Captain Elena Voss intended to use every second of it. On the bridge of the Resolute, Voss barked orders as her crew scrambled to keep up with the relentless pace of the battle. "Divert power to forward shields," she commanded, her voice cutting through the cacophony of alarms. "Target their lead cruiser and fire at will." The Resolute's railguns roared, sending streaks of kinetic energy ripping through the void. The shots connected with the Council's lead cruiser, breaching its shields and tearing into its hull. A cheer erupted from the crew, but Voss raised a hand to silence them. "Don't celebrate yet," she warned. "They're testing us. The real push is coming." Her words proved prophetic. Moments later, a new wave of Council ships surged forward, their weapons unleashing a devastating barrage. The human fleet scrambled to respond, but the strain was beginning to show. Smaller ships were being picked off one by one, their explosions adding to the growing graveyard of debris that littered the battlefield. "Captain, we're losing too many ships," Commander Malik reported, his usually steady voice tinged with urgency. "If this keeps up, we won't last another hour." Voss's mind raced, searching for a solution. They needed a way to turn the tide, something bold and unexpected. Her gaze shifted to the holographic map of the battlefield, and an idea began to form. It was risky, borderline suicidal, but it just might work. "Park," she said, turning to her communications officer. "Get me a secure line to all fleet captains." Park nodded, his fingers flying over the console. "You're live, Captain." Voss took a deep breath before speaking. "This is Captain Voss. We've fought valiantly, but the Council is starting to overwhelm us. It's time to change the game. I need every ship capable of maneuvering to form up on the Resolute. We're going to punch through their center and take out their command carrier." A stunned silence followed her announcement. Then, one by one, the fleet captains began to respond. "You're insane, Voss," came the voice of Captain Ortega, a grizzled veteran commanding the ironclad. "But I'll be damned if I'm sitting this one out." "Count us in," added Captain Wren of the Starfire. "Better to go down swinging." Within minutes, the remaining ships of the human fleet had regrouped around the Resolute. They formed a tight wedge formation, their weapons primed and shields reinforced. It was a desperate gambit, but it was also their best chance at survival. "All ships, this is it," Voss said, her voice steady despite the storm of emotions swirling within her. "Follow my lead and don't stop for anything. Together, we can break them." The human fleet surged forward, a spear aimed at the heart of the Council's armada. The Council responded with everything they had, their ships unleashing a withering hail of fire. The Resolute shuddered under the impact, but Voss refused to falter. She kept her eyes locked on the massive command carrier that loomed ahead, its bulk bristling with weaponry. "Target their engines," Voss ordered. "We need to cripple their mobility." The Resolute's railguns fired again, this time aiming for the command carrier's massive thrusters. The shots connected, sending plumes of fire and debris into space. Other ships in the human fleet followed suit, focusing their fire on the carrier's vulnerable points. Bit by bit, the colossal vessel began to falter. But the Council was far from beaten. Their ships closed in on the human formation, their weapons carving through shields and hulls with brutal precision. The Starfire was the first to fall, its destruction sending shockwaves through the formation. The Ironclad followed soon after, its valiant crew buying precious seconds for the rest of the fleet. "We're not going to make it," Park shouted, his voice breaking under the strain. "Yes, we will," Voss snapped, her eyes blazing with determination. "Keep firing." As the human fleet pressed on, the Resolute's sensors picked up a new energy signature. Voss's heart sank as she realized what it was. The Council's command carrier was charging its main weapon, a massive particle cannon capable of obliterating entire ships with a single shot. "They're targeting us," Malik said grimly. "If that cannon fires, we're done for." Voss's mind raced. They were so close, just a few more hits away from disabling the carrier. But the particle cannon would fire long before they could finish the job. Unless... "Dr. Tarsa," Voss said, activating a direct line to the fleet's chief scientist. "I need that subspace dead zone now. Can you do it?" Tarsa's voice crackled through the comms, tinged with urgency. "It's not ready yet. If we deploy it now, it could destabilize our own systems." "We don't have a choice," Voss replied. "Do it." Tarsa hesitated for only a moment before responding. "Understood. Deploying now." A series of modified EMP warheads launched from the Resolute and its surrounding ships, their trajectories converging on the command carrier. When they detonated, the void seemed to ripple and distort, as if reality itself were bending under the strain. The Council's ships faltered, their systems flickering as the subspace interference took hold. "Now's our chance," Voss shouted. "All ships, focus fire on the carrier." The human fleet unleashed everything they had, their combined firepower hammering the crippled command carrier. Explosions rippled across its surface, tearing through armor and igniting secondary systems. Finally, with a blinding flash, the carrier's core detonated, sending a shockwave that rippled across the battlefield. Cheers erupted across the fleet, but Voss remained focused. "Don't let up," she commanded. "The battle's not over yet." The destruction of the command carrier sent shockwaves, both literal and metaphorical, through the Council's forces. Their formations began to falter, their ships retreating in disarray. The human fleet pressed their advantage, exploiting every weakness with ruthless efficiency. By the time the Council's remaining ships began to retreat, the Andrelis system was a graveyard of shattered vessels and smoldering wreckage. The human fleet had emerged victorious, but at a terrible cost. Of the dozens of ships that had entered the battle, only a handful remained. On the bridge of the Resolute, Voss slumped into her chair, the adrenaline finally giving way to exhaustion. The crew around her cheered and hugged, their faces alight with a mixture of relief and disbelief. Against all odds, they had survived. "Captain," Park said, his voice filled with awe. "We did it." Voss managed a tired smile. "No," she said. "We're just getting started." The battlefield was eerily quiet now, the once chaotic void of the Andrelis system littered with the wreckage of destroyed ships. The twin suns cast long shadows across the debris, their golden light reflecting off the twisted remains of human and Council vessels alike. On the bridge of the Resolute, Captain Elena Voss stood at the observation window, her gaze fixed on the horizon where the last of the Council's retreating ships had vanished. The victory had been hard-won, but the cost was staggering. Of the 70 ships that had joined the fight, only a handful remained operational. The Resolute itself was barely holding together, its hull scarred and its systems pushed to their breaking point. Around her, the crew moved with a mix of exhaustion and quiet determination, their movements slow but purposeful as they began the grim task of assessing the damage and aiding the survivors. "Captain, we're receiving a distress signal from the Ironclad's escape pods," Lieutenant Park reported, his voice subdued. "They're adrift near the asteroid field. We're also picking up life signs on the surface of Andrelis Prime." Ground forces need immediate extraction. Voss nodded, her mind already prioritizing the tasks ahead. Deploy the recovery teams. Coordinate with the Starfire's medical crew for triage. And keep a close eye on those life signs. We don't know if there are Council remnants still lurking. Aye, Captain, Park replied, turning back to his console. As the crew sprang into action, Voss turned her attention to the tactical map. The Andrelis system was secure for now, but she knew the Council would regroup. This victory, as monumental as it was, would only delay the inevitable. The Council's resources were vast, and humanity's defiance would not go unanswered. They needed a plan, a way to turn this temporary reprieve into a lasting advantage. Commander Malik, Voss said, summoning her second-in-command to her side. I want a full analysis of our remaining fleet capabilities and an inventory of salvageable resources. Prioritize anything that can be used to reinforce our defenses or repair our ships. We need to be ready for whatever comes next. Malik nodded. Understood, Captain. I'll have a report ready within the hour. As Malik left to carry out her orders, Voss felt a familiar presence beside her. Dr. Tarsa, the fleet's chief scientist, stood with her arms crossed, her expression a mix of exhaustion and satisfaction. You pulled off a miracle out there, Voss said, offering a rare smile. That subspace interference field turned the tide in our favor. Tarsa shrugged, though a faint grin tugged at the corners of her mouth. Let's just say it was a calculated gamble. If those warheads had detonated even slightly out of sync, we'd be the ones drifting in pieces. Sometimes calculated gambles are all we have, Voss replied. But we'll need more than that to survive what's coming. Do you think we can replicate the interference field on a larger scale? Tarsa's grin faded as she considered the question. It's possible, but it would require significant resources and time, both of which are in short supply. And there's no guarantee the Council won't develop countermeasures. Then we'll find another edge, Voss said firmly. We've faced impossible odds before, and we'll do it again. Humanity didn't come this far just to be wiped out by a bunch of bureaucratic overlords. Tarsa smirked. Bureaucratic overlords with particle cannons and siege fleets. Details, Voss said, her tone light despite the weight of the situation. The two women shared a brief moment of camaraderie before a chime from Park's console drew their attention. Captain, we're receiving a transmission, he said. It's encrypted, but the signature matches one of our resistance cells. Voss's heart skipped a beat. The resistance cells were humanity's best hope for striking at the Council from within their own territory. If one of them was reaching out now, it could mean they had valuable intelligence, or that they were in desperate need of help. Put it through, she ordered. The screen flickered to life, revealing the face of a young woman with sharp features and piercing eyes. Her image was grainy, the connection barely holding. This is Commander Lyra of the Solstice Cell, she said, her voice urgent. We've intercepted critical data on the Council's next moves. They're planning a full-scale assault on the Orion colonies. If they succeed, it'll be the end of the resistance. Send us the data, Voss said, her mind already racing. We'll analyze it and coordinate a response. Lyra hesitated. There's more. The data includes schematics for a new type of weapon, something the Council believes will give them total dominance. We're working to decrypt it, but we're under heavy fire. We need immediate extraction. Voss clenched her fists. The Orion colonies were a vital stronghold for humanity, losing them would be a devastating blow. And if the Council's new weapon was as dangerous as Lyra implied, it could tip the balance of power irreversibly in their favor. Send us your coordinates, Voss said. We'll get to you as soon as we can. Lyra nodded, her image flickering as the connection began to degrade. Hurry. We don't have much time. The transmission cut out, leaving Voss staring at the blank screen. She turned to Malik, who had returned to the bridge. Change of plans, she said. Prepare a task force for immediate deployment. We're going after the Solstice Cell. Malik's eyes widened, but he nodded. Understood, Captain. I'll assemble the team. As the crew moved to carry out her orders, Voss took a moment to steady herself. The battle for the Andrelis system had been won, but the war was far from over. If humanity was to survive, they would need to keep fighting, not just with weapons, but with ingenuity, courage, and an unshakable will to defy the odds. Standing at the bridge of the Resolute, her gaze fixed on the stars, Voss felt the weight of the responsibility she carried. But she also felt something else, hope. Humanity had faced extinction before and emerged stronger. They would do so again. Set course for the Solstice Cell's location, she ordered. And let's remind the galaxy why humanity never gives up.